RSAC 2026 Conference, where insights drive action, solutions emerge, and community connections spark innovation. Be there March 23rd through March 26th. Secure your spot at rsaconference.com/ITSPMAG26.
The 72-minute gap, what the breaches, the vendors, and the messaging are actually telling us. A Lens 4 blog by Sean Martin. I look at the intersection of business, technology, and messaging regularly through three lenses. How organizations are running their operations and security programs. How vendors and innovations are reshaping the market. And how language influences the decisions that executives and practitioners actually make. Taken together, these three angles reveal where the real gaps and the real opportunities live. This time, the focus is cybersecurity, and the signals are hard to ignore. How fast are AI-driven cyber attacks, and can security programs keep up? The short answer, attackers are operating in minutes, and most defenders are not. AI-driven cyber attacks now move from initial access to data exfiltration in as little as 72 minutes, a 4 times acceleration over the prior year, according to the Unit 42-2026 Global Incident Response Report. Meanwhile, only 6% of organizations have fully deployed agentic AI in their security operations, even though 92% say AI helps their teams review more events. Reviewing events and responding at machine speed are fundamentally different capabilities. That gap is where breaches live. February 2026 proved it. Japan Airlines disclosed unauthorized access to customer data spanning back to July 2024. Wynn Resorts lost government-issued IDs to ransomware. ID Merit, a company trusted to verify identities, leaked 1 billion records. The University of Mississippi Medical Center had to close clinics and cancel procedures. Substack, Flickr, Crunchbase, and Malaysia Airlines all reported incidents in the same month. The thread connecting these was not sophisticated tradecraft. It was credential reuse, ungoverned third-party access, and peripheral systems nobody was monitoring. Gaps in visibility, not gaps in technology. Unit 42's data makes it stark. 65% of initial access is now identity-driven, with social engineering, stolen credentials, and IAM misconfigurations as the primary entry points. Identity weaknesses played a role in nearly 90% of all incidents investigated. And the institutional backstop is weakening. CISA has lost nearly 30% of its workforce since early 2025, dropping from about 3,400 to 2,400 staff. The CIRSEA final rule is delayed until May 2026. The Cybersecurity Information Sharing Act has expired. For every CISO trying to build a program that connects detection to response to business continuity, the question to the board is direct. If the federal infrastructure we relied on is diminished, what is our plan? But here is what makes this moment different from the last decade of "we are losing the arms race" headlines. Some organizations are closing the gap, and closing it fast. In a recent conversation on the Redefining Cybersecurity podcast, industry analyst Richard Styanin, former Gartner VP and founder of IT Harvest, described a CISO at a large enterprise who has already eliminated the entire SOC team. Not downsized, eliminated. Replaced by AI-driven SOC automation that triages 100% of alerts, builds cases, investigates threats, and executes containment. 24/7 at machine speed for a fraction of the cost of a human-staffed operation. That is not a vendor pitch. It is an operational reality that changes the math for every security program still staffing a traditional SOC. If one organization can do it, the question for every other CISO becomes, What is the cost of not doing it? Steyanen framed it bluntly. If a 90-day proof of concept costs $15,000 and your SOC budget over that same period is $1 million, every quarter you delay is a quarter of budget you do not get back. The workforce gap is 4.8 million globally. The breach tempo is accelerating. The programs that close the 72-minute gap will not do it by hiring faster. They will do it by rethinking what humans are for and what machines should own. Which vendor moves are actually changing the market? Platform consolidation is accelerating, but the most disruptive shift may not be coming from the platform vendors at all. Every major cybersecurity vendor is telling the same story. Consolidate with us, reduce complexity, get unified visibility. The question CISOs should be asking is whether the platform solves the operational problem they have today, or sells them a vision while their program struggles with basics. Palo Alto Networks posted $2.6 billion in Q2 revenue, but missed Q3 earnings guidance, with shares dropping 7% on integration costs from its $25 billion CyberArk acquisition. CrowdStrike told a different story. Net new ARR, up 73% year over year, extending Falcon through a single-agent architecture with targeted acquisitions of Seraphic Security and SGNL that avoid heavy integration overhead. The M&A signal is impossible to ignore. Google closed its $32 billion Wiz acquisition with EU approval. Cyra raised $400 million at a $9 billion valuation. Vectra acquired Netography to unify observability and detection. The consolidation is real. But underneath the platform wars, a different market is forming. IT Harvest now tracks 375 AI security vendors, almost all founded since 2022. Of those, 58 are focused specifically on SOC automation, not SIEM vendors adding features, but purpose-built startups replacing the SOC staffing model entirely. Collectively, they have received over $1.3 billion in funding. Many of these companies launched in early 2025 and reached $1 million in ARR within months. By year-end, several had hit $3 million in ARR for a product category that barely existed 18 months earlier. Steyanen's assessment is direct. By this time next year, tracking AI security as a standalone category will no longer make sense because every vendor will be an AI security vendor. That is a market structure claim, not a feature claim, and it has implications beyond the SOC. Agentic AI, autonomous systems that make decisions without continuous human oversight, landed at the top of Gartner's 2026 cybersecurity trends. Forrester predicts it will cause a public breach this year. That prediction already has a proof point. A vulnerability dubbed Clawjacked in OpenClaw showed that a malicious website could hijack a locally running AI agent through its core gateway. No plugins or user error required. Traditional identity and access management was never designed for machine actors that spin up dynamically, retain persistent credentials, and operate outside human governance life cycles. Gartner data shows 57% of employees use personal Gene AI for work, with 33% uploading sensitive data to unsanctioned tools. Enterprise Management Associates calls this the triple threat: agentic risk, identity governance deficits, and a visibility gap most organizations have not begun to address. The trust question is not abstract. As I explored with Steyanen on the podcast, if SOC automation tools are consuming your logs, your alerts, and your environment data, how much of that is flowing through public models? His answer is that most serious vendors are running models locally or using privacy-preserving approaches like federated learning with fully homomorphic encryption, keeping data encrypted even during processing. The privacy infrastructure is maturing alongside the automation capability. But the question every CISO should be asking their vendors right now is, where does my data go, and who else can see it? How is the industry's own language getting in the way? When buzzwords replace operational specificity, organizations lose the ability to measure what matters. Resilience is the dominant frame across every major analyst report and vendor keynote right now. The World Economic Forum's 2026 Global Cybersecurity Outlook is built around it. Gartner's trends emphasize it. Forrester's predictions assume it. The shift from prevent everything to prepare for the inevitable is healthy. But resilience without definition becomes a permission structure for mediocrity. Resilience to what? Over what time frame? If recovery takes 3 days and the attacker moved in 72 minutes, that is not resilience. It is damage control. Ask the patients in Mississippi whose procedures were canceled. The bigger messaging problem may be the gap between what the technology can now do and how the industry talks about it. Stienen posted his SOC automation research on LinkedIn and described the response. Half the comments defaulted to, "But you need human in the loop," and "What about controls?" The conservative security reflexes that have defined the profession for decades. That instinct is understandable. It is also increasingly expensive. AI model intelligence is growing by roughly 10 times per year. The industry's language and its planning assumptions are still linear. When the conversation is about whether to trust an autonomous system, and the system is doubling in capability every few months, the risk calculus changes faster than most governance frameworks can accommodate. The board-CISO communication gap reinforces this. The IANS and Artico 2026 benchmark report found that 95% of CISOs deliver regular board updates, but only 30% of boards describe the relationship as strong and collaborative. Nearly half of directors say CISO reporting on evolving threats needs improvement. The World Economic Forum data reveals a parallel disconnect. CEOs rank fraud and phishing as their top concern, while CISOs rank ransomware. When the board and the security leader are telling different stories about primary risk, the budget gets pulled in multiple directions without a clear operational anchor. Meanwhile, the macro spending numbers keep climbing. $244 billion globally in 2026, up 13.3%. With managed services growing fastest at 11.1% because organizations cannot hire fast enough to run their own SOCs. Cyber insurers are demanding evidence of specific controls before issuing policies, becoming an unofficial compliance mechanism. And in an industry spending $250 billion this year, the hardest question is not whether we have enough technology. It is whether we are honest about the gap between the story we tell and the outcomes we deliver. The language matters because it shapes what gets funded and what gets measured. When a vendor says platform, a buyer should hear consolidate everything with me. When an analyst says resilience, a CISO should ask resilient enough to do what? In the first 72 minutes? When a security leader says, we need human in the loop, press. For which decisions, at what speed, and at what cost? And when a policymaker says, back on mission, press. With what resources? 72 minutes. That is the story your program needs to tell. Can it? If this analysis is useful, whether you are a CISO evaluating your program, a vendor shaping go-to-market strategy, a product marketer cutting through noise, or an analyst mapping the landscape, I would welcome the conversation. This is what I do. Connect the dots between business operations, the technology that serves them, and the market forces that shape both. Reach out at seanmartin.com and subscribe to Lens 4, where business, innovation, and messaging come into focus.
RSAC 2026 Conference, where insights drive action, solutions emerge, and community connections spark innovation. Be there March 23rd through March 26th. Secure your spot at rsaconference.com/ITSPMAG26.